Nor, if he has had many great misadventures, will he recover his happiness in a short time. So, if there is a great deal of tragedy that befalls him, he's not really just right back on his feet the next day. These things really do put him off kilter. And as Ayn Rand says, it only goes down to a certain point. So that in the end he will be back to normal. It didn't break, ruin, or destroy him, right? But if he is to recover at all, only in a long and complete time in which he has attained many splendid successes. Why should we not say that he is happy who is active in accordance with complete virtue and is sufficiently equipped with external goods, that's a bit of chance there, not for some chance period, but throughout a completed life? Why shouldn't we say that this has to take place throughout a completed life? Certainly the future is obscure to us, while happiness, we claim, is an end and something in every way final. If so, we shall call happy those among living men in whom these conditions are, and are to be, fulfilled. But happy men. So conditions, so much for these questions. He says, ends it right there. Well, he says, then we can call those among living men in whom these conditions are, and in whom these conditions will be fulfilled, we should call these men happy. There we go. So much for these questions. So much for these questions, he says, and then we skip to the next subject, don't we? That the fortunes of descendants and of all of man's friends should not affect his happiness at all seems a very unfriendly doctrine. So he's bringing up a new subject here. See, he says the happiness of the man might be dependent on, quote, the fortunes of descendants and of all of his friends. To say that those things don't matter would be, quote, an unfriendly doctrine. Okay? And it would be one opposed to the opinions that men hold. Well, I don't really care what opinions men hold, but what opinions should men hold is what I'm concerned with. And I think that the concern that you should have for your descendants and for those around you, in society around you, is simply to know what kind of world it would be while you are breathing for them to benefit. Forget about them benefiting, because as Ayn Rand said, when you die, the universe ends. Sorry, all you nice people, but the universe will be over when I die. Sorry about that. She said, you're all very nice, but it's going to be the end of it. So, but what kind of universe do you live in while you're alive? Now, what made Ayn Rand happier, or what would have made her happier, let's put it that way, to sit around in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and see socialism taking over everything, and see communism, and see us bowing down to communism and trying to copy it here at home in America, and seeing all this, what would have made her happier? To fight as hard as she could against that and then die? Or to sit around and go, wow, this world's screwed, and then die? What would have made her happier? Now, the fact that people benefit from what she's doing is like icing on the cake, cream in the pudding, or whatever. It's not the primary goal. The primary goal has to be her happiness. And the question is, what would make her happier? Having a great CD collection and watching Islam take over Europe, or writing some books and saying a few things about this? But back to Aristotle. Now he put some verbiage for a second. If then, as some of a man's own misadventures have a certain weight and influence on life, so too there are differences among the misadventures of our friends taken as a whole. So, if the misadventures in your own life, screwing up, scandals, I may have broken some laws, but none of them ever hurt anybody, drinking when I was a teenager and stuff like that, and if you have misadventures and scandals in your life that detract from your life and your well-being, so much the more so for the society around you, that if they are all having misadventures in their lives, it will detract from you and your life. So says Aristotle, take it if you please. And wouldn't it be better then for your happiness, I think he's suggesting, and I would go there, wouldn't it be better for your happiness if you do what you can to help affect society in such a way that there are less misadventures in it, if it's within your power? If you care to, maybe CD collecting is more important to you. Maybe you have other things to do. Maybe not. Alright, now we skipped quite a bit. He goes on and jibber-jabbers just a bit. The good or the bad fortunes of friends, therefore, seem to have some effects on the dead. Now, put aside the idea for a moment that he's talking about, because he really is talking about a spirit world and the dead and stuff, and he says, but the effects of such a kind and degree as neither to make the happy unhappy nor to produce any other changes of the kind. So, if you die a happy man, and then the world falls to pieces, then there's not going to be too great an effect on your happiness. You're dead. He's maybe hedging his bet against Hemlock here. And if you die a sad man, and it turns out that your family prospered, that's not going to help you much. So, the real question is, what kind of world is it while you're alive? And I think his central point there is rather interesting. He says, the misadventures in your own life are bad, and so much the more so for the misadventures of the people's lives around you. How about this? You think, I don't care about this society, it's screwed, what the hell? You're a soldier in the Navy, let's say. You say, I don't care about this society, I'm not going to do my best to become a captain and try to put in good orders, try to do anything good for this Navy. No, I'm just going to schlep around. And then one day, a drunk commander sends your ship into a perilous battle, and they just sink. Happened to the Russians. They actually spent 6 months steaming around Africa, weren't allowed to use the Suez Canal. And as soon as they rolled up by the Japanese boats, they just sunk them. 6 months and then, 3-hour battle. So, are you going to step up and say something? Because if you're not, you might be the victim of the misadventures of the people in the society around you, as Aristotle puts it. The good or bad fortunes of friends, then, seem to have some effect on the dead, but effects of such a kind and degree as neither to make them happy or unhappy, so it won't produce much of a change in your happiness, state of happiness after you die. But my point is, and I revisit this before I go on, I actually did put a video up recently titled Millions of Lives on Your Shoulders. Millions of lives rest on your shoulders, I think, maybe. And the point of that video was that if you do take certain actions, you might be part of fixing the future. The future could end up being as bloody as the 20th century was. We had communism, and we had Nazism, and the Khmer Rouges, and all kinds of horrific things happen in the 1900s. And what's going to be the pattern for the 2000s, and the 2100s, and 2200s? Millions of lives rest on somebody's shoulders whose heart is beating as I record this video. And that's simply a truthhood, and whether or not you want to do anything about that's up to you. Here's the reason to, as we've just gone over here with Aristotle. The reason that you should possibly do something about the future is because it would change the world in which you live now. It would change the type of person you are. It would change your effect on the world, your feedback from the world, and it might actually change the world. It might actually have some real effect on the world. How bizarre would that be? And even if it didn't, you would die with this satisfaction of knowing the power that your actions packed. And maybe you wouldn't see the fruits of them, but you would have the satisfaction of knowing what you had created, knowing you had been efficacious, meaningfully efficacious, in a way that you consider to be good, to reduce the amount of horrific crimes done by criminals and stuff. Isn't that part of the quality of life? I submit. So, let us continue. It says, these questions having been definitely answered,